The invocation,
All
or we
right,
waiting
guys.
for the...
Greetings. We're live. Welcome to Magnets, Crystals, and Pyramids, along with Journey to Bliss. We have today Diana Pharr and Lalji Selassie, and the message for today is a message of love. I'm going to do the Baraka opening from the beach.
Call to action. The time is now. Summon the warrior energy in you, the healer in you, the divine masculine, the divine feminine energy in you. Every single day, we are called to walk in our purpose. Answer the call. Lay down your burdens, distractions, and anything that's holding you back, and take your rightful place. The battle is all around us, and it's right in your face. Let's go.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Nice. I just want to show real quickly this beautiful flyer that Rising Sun prepared for today's show. Absolutely beautiful. The message, Diana Pharr and Lalji Selassie. Nice. All right, guys. So you want to get started with the opening prayers, Lalji?
Sure.
And the blessings?
Sure, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Beloved mighty and presence, great hosts of sitting ascended masters, great angelic hosts, great cosmic beings who govern the system of worlds, and the seven mighty Elohim. I call upon your grace to enter into our minds and hearts so that we speak words of love, so that we think words of love, that we convey words of love, that we inspire words of love. Enter within us as we carry on this message of love to all our listening audience. I ask this in the name of Swami Muktananda Paramahansa, Bhagavan Nityananda, Guru Maha Chivalasananda, beloved Saint Germain, Lord Jesus Christ, and the great Sanat Kumar. And I thank you. Almighty I am, Almighty I am, Almighty I am.
Thank you. Thank you. So Diana, welcome, welcome. Do you want to start the presentation today regarding the message?
I can. Lalji and I had a conversation last night with the objective of uncovering the connection between our work, where there was connectivity that could be expressed in a message, and we both came upon the message of love. For me, everything that I do comes from the perspective of alchemy. And I felt that it would be helpful for your audience to have a definition of love from an alchemical point of view. What is that? What is love? Love, like magic, has been associated with contemporary definitions that do not align with what the ancients meant when they said love, what the ancients meant when they said magic. So I felt the definition of love would be helpful. And then also for the audience, how they could connect with that frequency. So love is a biophysiological reality. It's a force of nature. In science, it would correspond to the unified field, the level of non-duality, the level of life where conflict cannot reside because everything merges into and emanates from that central point, that source of gravity. So within human beings, it's our center. It's the center of our gravity. And it has physiological activity and correspondences. Pheromones are associated with certain chemical levels of love when we are emanating from our glands in our skin. Oxytocin when we connect with each other, when we look in each other's eyes, and there's a chemical connection. In terms of consciousness, love would correlate to gamma brain wave, associated with flow state or being in the zone. That state where you are so immersed into life that your sense of separateness dissolves, and you dissolve into the oneness. So with my work, it's important because being able to consciously and deliberately move into that state of oneness, of non-duality, is the first step in restoring the magic of your humanity. So so love has great power. Love, when we're on that frequency, we come out of our sympathetic, our fight, flight, or freeze nervous system. We move into the parasympathetic nervous system that changes who we are hormonally, and that brings in the healing power of love. That we transcend ourselves. Um, we rise above all of the maladies and the conflicts of this world. And we do it not by being directed by anything on a material plane. It's done by each of us getting our directions from source, from spirit. That's how our bodies operate. We have many body systems that don't collide with each other because there's an intelligence that they are all connected to, that they can function in juxtaposition to each other. And that's the model that we see in nature. That's the model that we see throughout the cosmos. So then the question becomes, then how do we connect? How do we deliberately connect with that frequency? We connect with that frequency through the choices that we make. That's how we do it deliberately. Before that, choice is the third movement in the practice, and in the basic practice of alchemy that I teach. And first breath, I talked about that last week. Then space. Space is our relationship to light and dark, our circadian rhythms. But choice correlates to the solar plexus chakra. It also is a connecting point for the neural system of the brain and the enteric system in the gut, which we experience as our intuition, our gut intelligence. And then the heart, the neural system of the heart. When we make choices and those three aspects of our being are in align with each other, we're being true to ourselves, and truth is the intelligence of love from an alchemical perspective. There are other systems that may have different definitions, but it's important to note, alchemically speaking, that love does not have to do with what it's most associated with, emotion and feeling. When alchemists talk about love, that's not what they're referring to. They're referring to the conscious state of non-duality where you transcend yourself. You may experience it when you're cleaning house, when you're driving on a road that you're familiar with, that a higher intelligence comes in. It's commonly referred to being in the zone. But it's a biophysiological reality, and it has great power because it's a unifying force. So the more of us that connect with that intelligence, what begins to happen is when you show up in your life on that frequency, how you respond to the circumstances in your life takes you to higher and higher ground. You're not responding to it based on what happened in the past. You're not responding to it based on ideology. You're not projecting your ideas onto the other person. All of that is transcended. When you start your day and you practice breath space, connecting with that force, then life begins to unravel and reconstruct itself around the soul. The person begins to experience the true realization of who they are. And as we realize that, which is who we are, our state, then judgment and duality and conflict disappear, because to realize who you are is to realize what everything is. If you don't, if you're seeing duality, then we want to frame where we are in that moment
Right.
and reconnect it with the breath. The breath is the great regulator that we can move out of duality into the oneness. That is so. The moment that we realize who we are, we realize what everything else is at the same time. They're one and the same. You can't separate them from each other. So the message is love. The message is that the great unifying force and power that masters left for us, that they, all of them said it in different ways, but they left for us that message that love is the key.
Nice, nice. Wow. Lalji, you want to jump in on that? You want to veggie back off of that?
Sure. When I first thought, we would hear about love and so forth and so on. And as a youngster, I thought about it and I did not grasp it really, be kind, this and that kind of thing, and then living with the guru and giving us all kind of knowledge, telling us that God is love, love is this, love is that. But when the guru put me into the state of a godly love, it was, it's always difficult to describe. It's like trying to describe sugar. How do you describe sugar? But the state of love, I tell you, in that state of consciousness, and love, of course, is a consciousness, everything comes out of love. Every single solitary thing comes out of love, right? Even hate. But let me not go down that road yet. When I was in the state of consciousness of love, forgiveness was absolutely automatic. Anybody I thought about that, just like when you're a kid, all you want to do is play. You don't want to be angry at somebody because playing is so much more fun than, remember as a kid, we just, like, if we had a beef with one of our boys, it's like, come on, we're going to play Ring and Levio, we're going to go play tag, come on, like that. And it's forgotten. That was that state. It was like a pure state. And it was really high. I mean, I felt like the drop became the ocean. I was aware of every single solitary wave in the ocean.
Yes.
And every wave was nothing but love. And I think about it, and of course it was from the Ethiopians, okay? And grandpa.
Yay.
And I don't have the capacity to even think beyond that state. I'm wondering to myself, is that the highest state? I mean, could there be something beyond that? And I thought, if it is, my God, I can't even think beyond that level of love that I was in. And I managed to stay in for like an hour, and when I came out of it, it was like, now you know what they mean when they say God is love. Consciousness is love. Love is this and that. Now you clearly know what it means. And I thought, as I was coming out of this thing, the natural thinking was, what do I do now for others? How do I help other people get this? It was like, it's just this natural state of now you give. All the virtuous qualities are in that state. It was so incredible as far as the state of consciousness. Now, this is what we're going for on the spiritual path. Yeah. What we're going for is to be stabilized in that state, locked in that state, to exist from that state. And everything corrects itself in that state. Everything corrects itself in that state. You're thinking, everything. It's very deep. It's very deep. And I thought to myself, when I was in the ashram, the life there, the lifestyle there, and the ashram wasn't small. It was kind of big as far as ashrams go, because we had the rice fields where we grew rice, and, we had a big old pond, nobody went swimming in it, but it was a big old pond, and, there was the paths to walk. We even had a mile long path, like around, where the ashramites could just walk around and stuff like that. And then we had the guru who would move to and fro. We'd be able to see him, talk to him, interact with him. If we got a deep question, we could, go and talk to him, stuff like that. And one day the guru came in, and whenever the guru comes around, everybody wants to be around him because you feel the love emanating off his body. You just feel it. It's just like it's radiating, right? I mean, Sister Diane knows about this because her husband was, a devotee of the same guru, of my same guru. And like I was standing in like a doorway. The guru was coming in from this doorway, and he just sat under one of the trees, right? And everybody, all the kids was coming up to him, Baba, 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 like this. And I was thinking about my situation, where I was living, what I was doing, the simple life that we was living. And I said to myself, if life here is this good, how much better could heaven possibly be?
Mm-hmm.
And the thought came to me, if your guru can do this, and he is teaching you all of this right now, you're in the very process of creating more beauty in the ashram because you're a carpenter. That's what the crew does, is a carpentry crew, right? Imagine if you could create an environment like this, maybe even bigger. Imagine how much love you could have. How many people want to leave that environment to go into some quasi-hellish situation?
It's funny, I just want to say, I noticed that you mentioned like children being in like a childlike, playful manner. I guess it's like a natural love when you're a child. And somehow along the way, as we grow up and we become adults, we lose this loving energy. Like, what is it that's happening to us that we have to be now taught about love, how to recognize love, how to give love, how to accept love? What happened to us as a people that from childhood we don't know what love is? We honestly don't know what love is. Somewhere along the line,
we're disconnected from it. We're disconnected from it. But I wanted to, Laraji said something that's so important. All of the noble qualities are associated with love. And what I've noticed today is that we hear about the qualities associated with love without the connection to love. The other thing that I wanted to underline that Laraji said that's so important is that forgiveness is a byproduct of the connection. All of those qualities are a byproduct of a connection. If you try and be kind in the face of abuse, if you try and be compassionate for those that are being cruel to you, you end up pushing those emotions into your organs. The goal is, and I know he just said all of this, but I wanted to underline it because it's so important. What he just said is that our goal and objective has to be the connection. What seems to be happening right now is that people are aspiring towards the byproducts of connection before they've made the connection. And that creates suffering and confusion. Love. That, and the other thing I want to say is that the connection is very accessible. The connection is something that we can step into at any time. That's what we'll be doing on June 4th. The first step in restoring your magic is making the connection. And making the connection is simply being able to immerse yourself in yourself enough that you go beyond the framework that your awareness has become focused on. Because most people there, and this is to answer your question, Ms. Bliss, most people, their focus is seen through the lens of a life event that distorted their sense of reality. And very often that happens very young. So even if we're studying spiritual science and technology and meditating and doing yoga and doing all of these things, until that has been resolved, we're still experiencing reality through that lens. And the fact that it becomes more and more amplified is because in our journey to connect with love, the longing for connection becomes stronger. We may not recognize that is what it is, but that's what it is. And our ability to reconnect with it is very, very strong. We've all had the experience where you are just moving through the day, and you feel conflict between your thoughts, your heart, and your gut. That when you're seeking to make decisions, whether or not you think a certain way, whether or not this is rational, whether or not your heart is in alignment, and whether or not your gut is in alignment. And those things are actual empirical things. Those three levels of our being are actual things. They're networked into nature. We're networked into nature. We're networked into the cosmos. That's called the nadis. Those are in acupuncture. It's called the meridians. Intelligence comes to us through our subtle anatomy that directs us. So what has happened, the answer to what has happened to us is that we've been living under the supervision and under the direction of beings that direct us away from that. We're required very young in life through the educational system. Lalji and I talked about that last night. Through the education system, through the culture, through our need to be able to exist in a society that we live, moving away from our natural state is required. So it's a very conscious indoctrination that we go through the educational system. Our parents advocate for the educational system because they think that that's in our best interest. And then there's the history, that brought us to this space time. There's a tremendous amount of history of thousands of years that correspond to the descent of consciousness. And the point that we are now, we're in Dwapara Yuga now. We're just starting to move back towards the cosmic light, the center. But we're still viewing ancient systems, many of us, through the lens of a life event. So we'll get there. But the thing that I want to stress is that you can access that power immediately. You can access that power immediately. It's not what it seems like. It's so hard to connect with because we approach it through the cognitive rational mind and through the emotional body. So we have to navigate through all of the popular things that we're doing now to navigate through that. But that's not alchemy. Alchemy isn't counseling, and it's not shadow work. Alchemy is transcendence. That you move into the higher state, the higher octave, and the higher octave resolves those issues through you approaching life from the center of your love.
Wow, thank you, Lalji. You wanna jump in on that question?
Yes, I would love to. The average, there's so many analogies of how that love gets lost, and how you willfully disconnect from your source of love. It happens when we're kids. We're bashed and we're beat and we're hit and we're bullied and we're in love. We're really operating from a state of love. And what ends up happening is we have to build another self to protect ourselves, or so we think. So we're in a state of God consciousness, and we're using the power of love every day. It's like it's in our play. It's the food we eat. As a guy, we don't really care what we wear, but the girls' nice dresses and jumping rope and like this doing. I remember all that.
Teach.
And then you go out there and the guy he punch you in the face, and you're like, "Dad, I don't want to fight." And then you go to school and the teacher's telling you this. Then if you're unfortunate, you got a parent that beats you or both parents beating you, and you grow up getting beat every day. And one day you decide, I'm not going to let nobody do this to me anymore. And you build this, you set up, you plant the seed. The seed is like this. If he hits me again, I'm going to punch him so hard, I'm going to knock him out. And he hits you. And you punch him, and he falls down. You don't knock him out, he falls down. Then you realize when he doesn't mess with you anymore, okay, now this is who I'm
Mm.
going to be. And then you start piling up on this person more and more and more and more and more and more and more. Then the next thing you know, you have built this personality that you begin to like a lot because you don't want nobody hurting you.
Wow.
You don't want to be hurt. So
Oh,
you actually cover up your love for the sake of safety. And
mhm,
then this ego you start building takes on a life
mhm,
of its own. And you
mm,
become that dude. And
mhm.
sometimes you become many different. There's more than one person in here. It's,
Right.
you know, for me, I met one of mine and it was a glorious experience, although frightful, you know. And I shared this experience with you and Hank before.
Yes.
And, you know, it's like that was a boon from God. I'm meeting a
Mhm.
person inside of me that is so
Violence.
diabolical. Um, he's
Mhm,
so diabolical. When you look at him, you'll be afraid to move forward. I
mhm.
used to think I learned the martial arts, and these people that's bigger than me and badder than me, you know, they heard about me. They must know that I'm the man. I'm weighing 145 pounds. Okay, all right, and for real, all right. And and he told me, he said, you thought they was afraid of you? That little
Mhm,
bit of martial arts, you know, you that's what you thought they were afraid of? They saw
mhm.
me. That's why they backed down. They saw me, you know? And like I had built this entity that got so bad that all I had to do was look at somebody and it was like it would freeze them. And this is our journey into out of love, you know? And once you start building this entity, which is your personality or multiple personalities, you jump into it, you know, both feet, bam. This is who I am. I'm a bad mama jama from Beekman Street. You mess with me,
Mhm.
you bound to get beat. And next thing you know, that's who you are. And you
Right.
trap yourself in this personality to the point
Mhm,
that you don't know your way this way or that way in love. And it gets
mhm,
really bad. It gets really bad because what ends up happening when you remove yourself far enough away from love,
mhm.
it's difficult to find your way back. And you
Mm.
become afraid of yourself. Now,
That part.
now you're really far away, you know.
That part.
You,
That part.
he just said, "Wow, Laraji, namaste." Because what he just so eloquently described is what most people are experiencing,
Mhm,
at least here in the United States, over identification with the mask. And the other thing is that there's a spell in the world that presents love as weakness. Love is a phenomenal power, but it's not presented that way.
mhm,
And we are not aware of it in that way as children in a way that we can protect ourselves with love. We don't know that as children, but the what he's describing, I think, is what most people are experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
That over identification with the shadow to
Yeah.
protect
mhm.
themselves. And when you protect yourself from what comes in, you also build a barrier to yourself. I call it casting spells against yourself.
Oh, yeah.
But this is the thing I want to continue to reiterate is that consciousness has a geography. And from the place of our mental emotional self,
Mhm,
ascension seems so far away, or that it's like if you were in muddy water and you were
mhm,
drowning in muddy water, but you could rise up above that water and there's fresh air and sunlight, but you don't know that. You're in the muddy water and you're swimming through it and you're trying to find a way out through the muddy water because you don't know that you could go up and breathe
mhm,
fresh air.
mhm,
That's what the connection. We don't. It's not about from the perspective of alchemy, and it's not that there's not that it's not a need for all of the healing modalities that are resurfacing
mhm.
now. We do need them.
Right.
There are things that we should understand that one, we're not viewing them with the same consciousness that the ancients that brought them forth. We're not seeing it
Mm.
from the same perspective.
Right.
we should understand that we are at a particular place in the journey. The other thing is that, well, it's the original point that I was making, is that you can step out of that in awareness. You can step out of that into flow state. What in neurology is called your gamma wave state. And we've all had that experience. Haven't you been in the zone where you transcended your emotions? You weren't feeling the stress of the world. You weren't feeling that presence. You weren't feeling disconnected from others. You were in that state. We can go there deliberately. And there's great power. And the more people that go there, that connect with that, we'll begin to see a shift of salvation in the world. And there are many of us that play different roles and bringing that about. But it's accessible. It only seems like it's impossible on the frequency of the lower emotional realm that that has created this presence in the world of fear that blocks us from making that connection. But we can step up. We can step up out of it without resolving, going to, alchemy is not psychology. It's not therapy. Alchemy has to do with energetic realities. When you step up to a higher frequency, what's going to happen in your life is your husband or your mother or your children or your job are going to still be there, but they're going to change because you've changed. So when you start to vibrate to love, now you're not in a loop. Now you're not going around in a circle doing the same thing over and over again. Because you're applying that higher frequency to how you approach your life, then pathways start to open up. That's what the tree of life is. It shows us different aspects of ourselves that open up pathways, and those pathways in our life are literal. It's meeting someone. It's the opportunity to move forward in your life. That happens when we make that connection within ourselves.
Nice, nice, beautiful, beautiful,
You know,
beautiful. Go ahead, Lalji. Go ahead.
I I wanted to kind of like tell two stories in this regard of how we lose ourselves there, because it doesn't just out of love. We lose ourselves out of our love. We're taking births. We're immortal beings having an immortal phase in our life, right? In this third dimension, and one life can be so devastating that we're out of love even when we get in the next life. I mean, this is manifesting in front of our eyes, in the society, in the world that we live in. In my guru's ashram, he gave me the experience of a life where I really got out of love. I mean, this was in ancient Egypt, 50,000 years ago. I mean, it was during the time of Atlantis, but I was in Egypt and I was a slave. And I was trying to be a good slave, and I was literally treated like an animal. I mean,
Wow.
it was horrible. I mean, I was treated like an animal, and I stayed humble the whole time. And he showed me the end of this life. And I was under a wagon, and there was someone next to me, another slave under a wagon with me, and I could feel I was dying. And I had said to myself, "Look at this. Your whole life, you tried to be a godly man. You tried to be someone good, and all you get is this. Look at you now, And I took an oath. I said, I swear to God, I'll never let anybody abuse me again. Not even by accident. Not even in a dream. I don't care if it's a pharaoh, a god, a jinn. Don't matter. You disrespect me, and that's it." And I died with that thought in mind. I died on that thought. My situation was so bad after that, I couldn't live more than I could never get out of youth, because anybody that disrespected me, especially who, and it didn't matter. There was no filter. If I felt the disrespect, I'm coming at you. I had to be born all the way up until this very birth. I had to be born in a noble line, or else my life would be short. I'd make no progress. This is what I was told. The first birth that I could take and be born in a poor family and be raised to be a humble person, to be raised. Now, I don't say that I'm at that place of humility, but I'm much further than I was. And so, and this is how that disconnection from love, starts ending up. In one life, it's so powerful that maybe 1,000 lifetimes going past it would take to heal. So when you disconnect from this source of love, you are still the love that has built this disconnection. So now the journey, the path, the spiritual journey, the spiritual path is getting reconnected. Doing whatever you know to do to be reconnected back with your God self, to realize the part of the Trinity that you abandoned was the emotional part of God. It is still God. Has the force of God. You're being watched over by God. You are God that fell into a hypnotic state of your own creation. And you, so to say, you're disconnected from God. You're not really disconnected, but in this hypnotic dream state, you're disconnected. So the journey is getting back to God, and you get glimpses of this on the way. If you're doing it, right? If you're on the path, you meditate, you have visions, you're chanting, you feel that love, you're doing a mantra, you're being responsible, you're doing service. Now you can see you pushing the love forward. And as you push the love forward, it builds inside you. What I mean by that is like this. So you're doing service, right? And your service, like Sister Diana right here. So your service is helping other people move further on the path to start experiencing love in a real, real way. Even if they're only experiencing it from you first, they're only experiencing that love from what you're doing for them. It's clean, it's pure. I noticed this with Sister Adara. I noticed that with her. As she was talking to me, about the science, it was like she was concerned. It was genuine. It was free. It was genuine. When you live with the guru and you start building stuff, like we worked on a hospital, we worked on this, we worked on that, the love is pushed forward. But as you're pushing it out, it's coming into you. The service is like, it's coming into you because you're doing the work. Like this, it's the journey back. Then we can read scriptures, like this, it's the journey back.
I have a question. So I know that you mentioned when, things were not as good in your life and you built this ego for protection. So are you saying that when we're on the love frequency, we don't need that protection that you built up, that ego? Or is there some sort of balance that you're trying to project? Like, because it sounds like you needed that, because the reality is that we're here in America dealing with certain things, our people. So they need to figure out a way to protect themselves. And so if you're saying you're in the highest frequency of love, do we need that other part just in case? Or do we not need to operate that at all?
When you say the other part, what do you mean, the other part?
You said like you started fighting and you became like it was a way to protect yourself. So you built this this guy who was diabolical, who was at times very violent and hostile, but this is your way of protecting yourselves. So do we only operate on the frequency love, or do you feel that there's some sort of balance and when we would need to be that way in certain circumstances?
I would like to answer that in 3 ways. The first way is it's love, wisdom, and power. It's not all love. Without wisdom and power, it's going to be an imbalance, right? Here's the other thing. I'd like to tell this story. I had so much hatred in my heart at a certain time. And so I was directed in at white people. Now, it wasn't white people because they ain't do nothing to me. I'm just reading nonsense. So I'm building up the nonsense in my mind. You create your own fantasy because you hear the cop shot a guy. They didn't shoot you, but the hatred starts building up, the resentment, the what do you call it? The injustice and all this like this, right? So I'm coming home at night, and this was toward the end of my hustling days, right? So this guy, a white guy in a car, he's coming down the Grand Concourse before they shut it off like it is now. It's blocked. This road is really blocked. What happened couldn't happen. And he tried to hit me, come down the street on 168th Street in the Bronx, and he tried to hit me with his car. Now, I got guns on me, but I can't shoot the car. And I jump to the side of the road, and I don't get hit, right? So The car makes a U-turn. He goes up to the concourse. He makes the left going uptown, right? I run to the street. Now, I was always an expert shot. It was a natural ability, right? So I run to the Grand Concourse. This is 3 o'clock in the morning. Nobody's out. Concourse is empty. I aim, shoot, fire, blah, ow, bam. Car veers off into a tree and explodes.
Wow.
This is a dream. This is a dream I'm having. It was not a real event, but it felt so real. I felt I murdered this person. I felt I killed this person. Okay? Now, we're talking about being out of love. We're talking about the hatred that keeps us locked in love. A foundation of hate, locked there, right? So, and I'm all day, every day now, I killed this guy. I killed the guy. And I know it's a dream. And so I asked the guru, I go, I had a dream, Baba, and, I dreamed I killed a guy, and it was a dream, but I feel like I killed the guy. And he says, let me tell you what the grace of God gave you in that dream. God protected you in that dream by moving you out of the street so that car could not run you over or hit you. You decided because you had murder in your heart that you was going to go up to the Grand Concourse and shoot that guy knowing you could not miss.
Wow.
You had murder in your heart. That's why you did what you did. That was a boon to you to let you know if you murder anybody in this life, especially being on the path that you're on, not only are you going to go to hell, but this guilt is never going to leave you. You need to understand that. You were already protected. You felt you needed to extract this type of vengeance. It was completely unnecessary. You are protected. You are my son. Nothing is gonna harm you. You have covertures all around you, protective armor, covertures, protective armor, all around you. But you decided you were going to go outside of that, so you could satisfy this murder lust in your heart. Hopefully, this feeling doesn't exist with you anymore.
I wanted to respond to that question also, Miss Bliss, because what you're asking is love absolute?
Right.
That's what you're asking. Yes, love is absolute, but we have to get to the frequency where we are where we are centered in love. And what what he just explained or shared in his story is that once we touch that frequency and we spend some time in that frequency, there's a process of what's called temperance. You don't have samadhi and you're touched by the light and you're necessarily a realized avatar being.
Right.
What your life does is tempers you. It's like fasting, but through your heart. That you have, I'm sure that is because you do plant medicine, I'm sure you've had experiences where you felt one with the divine, and then the next week you might have felt like if she don't shut up, I'm gonna have to slap her.
Yeah.
That's because we're multi-layered beings. So that's what the master was telling Lalji in the story, that what happens to us once we devote ourselves to the path, to a practice that purifies us and allows us to align with that frequency. Two things happen. One, our need to have to protect ourselves in this dimension begins to dissolve. I've had circumstances where someone was trying to mug me, and I was just still and just breathed into the moment. And I just said, you don't want to do this. And the brother said, no, I don't. He walked me home because he didn't want someone else to mug me.
Wow.
But, and the thing is that this is the nature of magic. The nature of magic is once you connect with it, then the universe and life begins to conspire on your behalf. And when you see that, you learn to get out the way and allow life to do that on your behalf. Because part of how we experience ourselves now is disconnected from everything, the cosmos, from God, from love, and even from ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But once you've touched that, once you've been willing to touch that, whatever experience you have that brings you into divine union, then a process of tempering emerges from that. That's what gurus pass to their disciples. You are touched by the light. You experience divine union. You experience Shakti. And that process unravels up your energy centers. And so if the question becomes, what is the thing, that you need to do, that I need to do, that the individual needs to do, so that they experience salvation, so they are released, they are redeemed from what is preventing them from being connection, is that thing that's showing up in your life every day that we avoid, that we don't want to face, going to a state where, because it feels like it has to be confrontational, it's difficult. That presence separates us from being our deepest authentic self. But the more we do whatever your spiritual practice is that connects you to that, when you are able to navigate through that with the frequency of love, then you open up to another plane of reality. So it's different for everyone, and that's what your astrological chart is. That's why someone can look at your chart and know what are the things that you are working through that will redeem you as an individual. It's not one size fits all. There are things that are universal. Love is universal. But our process to get there is not universal. Our process to get there is individual. For Laraji, it was having gone through this experience. And what, the other thing that I made a note here in terms of his story that's so meaningful is that's a huge existential conflict for people of color, because the history is so nefarious, so brutal, so evil. It's that I remember in the 70s when I began to talk about love, and that was in the environment of Black power and struggle for the struggle. And it was like, if I started to talk about love, it's like people wanted to throw stuff. It's like, how could you possibly, we're supposed to love in the face of this, because we're separated from the construct of the universe. As you begin to practice connecting with that power, then life conspires on your behalf. You have the force of the cosmos behind you. And when that, it's, again, magic is not something that we do. Magic is what we are. Magic is what we are. And we are that through our connection. So the story in terms of, how do you get beyond the reality of what we're experiencing in this planetary reality as a people? The answer to that's it. It seems like a general question, but it's not a general question. It's an individual question. We're all experiencing it based on our individual soul's journey. And what each soul has to do to resolve that is showing up in their life on a daily basis.
Wow. Beautiful, beautifully said. Thank you so much. Wow.
I had three things I wanted to share with our listening audience and our panel. As you're on that road to love, I want to give a practical story of how you could keep love and nurture love and keep it going on, because it seems to us the concept of death do you part in relationships is out the window. It's more like now it's like, what can I get from you when we no longer get along, rather than we're going to work through this like the people did in the past. And we all come to these situations where we're tired with our mate, and there's challenges that we got of things we got to work on. And sometimes we just don't see that we are causing the matter, and
Mhm.
we just want to separate from our mate. And I was at this point many years ago, a couple of decades ago, because my sons are in their 20s now, and I was gonna break up with my wife. I was like,
Mm.
I can't take it no more. I don't want to argue. I just can't take it. But see, when you're in a family, and I'm saying this so that everyone that's out there that's in a family, because this is breakup city, you just break up, I don't like you no more. I'm unhappy or this, that, and the other. And that's enough
Right.
to break up a family, having no considerations that there are children in this family. That you're breaking up a unit of power, right? And so, this was happening. I'm getting ready to leave. And my son says to me, my oldest son says to me, and at this time, I had him in a school called Rudolf Steiner. And one was in the school of Rudolf Steiner here. The other was in Philosophy Day School directly across the street. It was on 79th Street in the Bronx. And Bhishma says to me, he goes, Dad, please, and from his very heart, frustrated that, my family's about to break up. His whole mind, I could see the turmoil he's going through. And he said to me, please don't break up with mommy. I'm the only
Mm.
kid in my class that has both their natural parents.
Wow.
Now, half of Hollywood was in this school, right? So this is affecting everybody. It's not that you got money, fame, and everything else. It don't matter. There's just breakup, right? And
Wow.
I had to consider the love I had for him leaving his mother. Then my other son says to me, he's a lot more subtle. He goes, he's like 3. And he just looks at me and he goes, I just don't want to be in a broken family, Dad. So I had to take into consideration, your wife ain't the only one you love in this family.
Mm-hmm.
What is your leaving going to do, especially considering what kind of dad you are, how you scienced this, how you, prepared for them, all the work you put into dealing with them, teaching them in the womb, literally teaching them in the womb while they was born,
Mm-hmm.
teaching especially the youngest one, taught him 12 languages in the womb before he took his first birth,
Mm-hmm.
and all the sciences, right? And I'm like, you going to leave this? You're going to leave this? See, your wife is still fine. Somebody, the guy is going to come scoop her up, and he's going to get everything you taught her. He's going to get everything that she learned from you, and he's going to get your kids. Are you sure that this is what you want? And I had to really think about, number one, I just can't have it. Can't have nobody else around my kids. At the same time, whether I left my
Or
wife,
your woman.
I was getting there. Whether I left my wife and she was without me alone, she can't have no other man. That's it. I'm your man for life. That's it. All right.
Oh, so you were going to leave and she was going to be alone for the rest of her life.
Whatever it's going to be, you, my wife, that's it. There's no more. That's it. That's your life. That's it.
Okay. Right? Okay. So this is the Miss Bliss. Miss Bliss always asks the why does that the why question. So Miss Bliss, this is your moment to say, why does that happen? And can we be committed to another person for life?
Yes. I was waiting for him to just finish. I was hoping he was going to already answer it, but that is the question.
Course.
That is the
question. My point is this.
Miss Bliss question.
My point was this.
The $1 million question. Well,
definite. My point is this. As you're climbing back to God, so to say, right? The ladder that you use to perfect yourself, to get you out of the mire of your own creation, is the virtuous qualities. Start with forgiveness. Okay. Start with, when I learned the martial art, I was really, really good, right? So somebody tried to start trouble with me in the street and they don't know who I am. It's like, you're picking on that guy. They don't know that you can knock him out, one blow. They don't know your punches travel at 120 miles an hour. They don't know that. So when you do that, you're going against the art itself. See, like that. So when somebody starts trouble with you, you really don't have to act in violence. You really don't have to take advantage of them because you're a fighter and they got no chance. That don't mean that you throw violence to the side. Violence has its place, like everything. Even anger has its place at times. You just don't want to live in violence. You don't want to live in anger. You don't want to live in the negative qualities. Practice the virtuous qualities, like forgiveness, humility. These are not so easy, especially in the Scorpio state of mind. Forgiveness is not dear in my heart. Vengeance is for
I hear
Scorpio.
you.
Vengeance.
I want to answer the question that Miss Bliss did not ask, but I know that she was thinking it. And this goes back to what was stated earlier about the level of awareness and how the lens that we experience ancient systems through, and the level of consciousness that we all have to realize that what we're experiencing is only a fraction of the human perspective. And in many societies, marriage is a sacrament. And in our society, we make a commitment to each other. But in many other societies, when you marry someone, the commitment is to God, which is very different. That's what Lalji is talking about, that he transcended just what was going on between him and his wife, because his children brought to his attention that there's a higher commitment you have here, your family, that it's not just about you and the mate. So cultures that do things cultures that choose mates based on astrology, elders mate people. Many societies had different rites of passage in regard to marriage. So when you take a system like Ifa, an African technology, that the well-being of the community is based on each individual within the community being devoted to their ori, to their head, to their purpose. That the culture is based on what sustains our well-being is that everyone is playing out their rightful role. Right. Within a culture like that, when you have elders that advise that you are making a commitment to support the path of this individual and your community. That's what Pluto and Aquarius means. Pluto Aquarius has to do with where does if you are truly being yourself, your life's work, what brings you success, what brings you satiation, what brings you happiness, has to have a role that the whole benefits from it also. That's the natural body. Nothing in nature serves itself. The sun is 90 million miles away from us, but it is the source that our food grows. Rivers don't drink its own water. Oxygen in our environment does not need itself to sustain itself. So that natural model in terms of where human beings fit within the natural order, in many cultures, that was the model for marriage. It is a sacrament because you are making a commitment to God to support the path of another individual, to walk in harmony with that. So that's a very different point of view. Mm-hmm. That's a very different perspective when we come on those times. And Lalji, you did well, because my last husband, I was looking for somebody to take him out. So you did good. You just wanted to leave. God. You just wanted to leave. I wanted somebody. He hit my son. He hit my son. He made my son. He hit my son, and I was going to kill him or have him killed. I grew up colored, and I stand on the shoulder, just like I stand on the shoulders of my African ancestors and my Atlantean ancestors and my ancestors from Mu. I very much stand on the experience of my coloredness, and he violated my child. He had to die. Wow. He had to die. I was talked out of it, and what made me not do it was that I had children, and if I killed him and I was caught, then my children would be without a mother. But that's the lesson of the Bhagavad Gita, that Krishna talks to Brahma not Krishna. Krishna talks to Arjuna
Mhm.
and explains to him, because Arjuna, for the listeners, if they don't know the story of the Bhagavad Gita, but Arjuna is getting ready to go to war with his family.
Mm.
And his chariot, who's driving his chariot is God, is Krishna. And he says to Krishna, he says, I don't want this. I'd rather die. I'd rather die than kill my relatives. And Krishna tells him, it is your dharma to be a warrior. You don't have the power of life and death in your hands.
Mhm.
You have to do what's dharma. You have to do what's right. And I'm of that thinking. I'm a 9 life path with Sun conjunct Pluto. I'm a warrior. You know, I have 5 9s in my name. I'm born in the 9th month, and that's Martian energy. So I have a very strong warriorship aspect of my nature. In this incarnation, my weapon of choice is love, is the transcendental, because that's what's appropriate. But I've had lifetimes, many lifetimes, where I drew blood. You know, so it is back to be on topic, that I want to continue to come back to the point that the circle with the dot in the center, that dot is the divine, and it dwells within us. And our lives are magnificently orchestrated and shaped around what we need individually as an evolutionary process to get us back home, to get us back home. But it's reminded that, you know, we have to be reminded, this is the freaking dark ages.
Mhm.
You know, we're very far from the cosmic light. And our perceptions about marriage and ideologies, you know, sex is an alchemical principle, and it rotates. It looks, you know, this rotates. This isn't stagnant. This moves. So you have historical periods that are matriarchal. You have historical periods that are patriarchal. And when you have the type of space time that we're in, you'll have people, because of their past lives, that identify very strong with the patriarchal, because they've been there a lot as a soul. Then you have people who will identify very strongly with something else, because it's part of their soul's experience. Because our ancestors lived on the same land for thousands of years and passed down wisdom. That's not the type of environment that we're in.
Right.
We're in an environment of a mixture of, we're mixed blood, our ideologies, you know, it is so that's why love is so important, because it is one of the great master keys that we can use to navigate life.
Mm.
It is the dot in the center of the circle of my aunt.
Right. Wow. A family, I have to say, I see the messages. Diana, Lalji, we are triggering a lot of emotions and past memories from some of the people in the chat. They are saying that, you know, they're some of them may be getting emotional, even crying. One of them left the show and came back to listen again, because obviously this is too good to miss. Family, make sure you have your water or your crystals with you. I think at the end of the show, we're going to have Lalji pull up a prayer for everyone. We don't want to leave you guys open and emotional. Diana, if you have any suggestions for anyone to help them get through this, because they are, some people are talking about their past relationships and their parents. Some people are talking about abuse. So it's kicking up a lot of emotion within a lot of people who are watching. And we're definitely going to have a prayer for you at the end and some type of guidance until June 4th.
What I would recommend is that, you know, the foundation of the practice is the breath. So before we end, breath is an emotional regulator. Emotion is physiological. Your heart beating, your pulse gets more rapid, your eyes dilate, you know, you change hormonally. And that all of that is regulated through the breath. So before we end, we can just do some simple breath work. And then the prayer work that Lalji can do is for protection, you know, for light and protection and guidance. So we can do that. The audience is my email is circulating, and Absolutely. People who, your audience, if you're in the sound of my voice, whether or not you hear this broadcast today or in the following days, you are invited as a guest to June 4th. We're doing the first work of magic is to step into that frequency. We're doing preparation for the world in the morning. Then people will be sent out to experience magic and then come back and testify. So people can email me at the email that is circulating the broadcast, and I will send them the Zoom links if they choose to participate.
Thank
So
you.
that's an environment. That's exactly what we'll be doing, is working on emotional regulation and balancing energy, resetting the vagus nerve. So we'll be doing that work as a preparation to get in alignment with that frequency before we go out into the world and come back and talk about it.
You know, I'm
Yes,
seeing
thank you.
some of the comments of the people in the audience, on the bottom of the screen. And relationships can be emotionally damaging to such a degree, you'll go to bed and you won't get out that bed till you're dead, or you'll murder somebody. We are talking about an emotional reality, right? My relationship with my wife was this was an arranged marriage. 32 years later, and 5 children raised, we still together. This is what I kind of like, because things were going bad down here in Atlanta, and we struggling, and it's just constant bickering, arguing. Nothing that I'm saying could be heard, and it just seemed like this cockamamie stuff coming from the woman, and I'm like, man, I'm dying over here. I can't do this, and I don't want to do this. Then I said to myself, what happened to her? And then I said to myself, what did you stop doing when things were like, you were happy, y'all were happy, family, everything going pretty good. Before my wife left the house, every single solitary day she left to go to work, right? I would stop her and I would kiss her across her lip about 5 times. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's so sweet. Hold on, Lalji. You're not going to get away with that. Repeat that again, because that sounds so loving, so nurturing, and I could just feel that energy.
Now, she got the Nubian lips, really pretty. So I kiss her on the side of her mouth first. Then I kiss her toward like 3/4 to the edge. Then about 5/8 to the edge. Then smack dab in the middle. Then, on the left side, the same thing. Every day. And like, she's like, bye, and go off happy, right? And it's like, we get here. What happened to the kisses? I'm saying, she ain't happy now. What happened to the kisses? Every time I address her, I call her FW, which is short for fine woman, or FWOPE, which is an acronym in letters for finding the finest woman that exists on the whole face of the planet Earth. I have to short it down.
I have a question. How did you end up having an arranged marriage, being from Brooklyn? How did that happen?
She's from Brooklyn. I just lived all over New York, but I wanted to get married. It was at a time, I'm 35, and I created, I set myself up. I'm ready. I did all my sowing oats, so forth and so on, and I'm on the path. So I bring a girlfriend to the guru, and the mental message was, is she going to be good enough, kind of like that, right? If I know what I know now, I don't think any woman would be good enough with my 15 qualities that they have to have, which is faithful, loyal, devoted, fit, thinly, fine, submissive, cooperative,
15
respectful.
Women.
Huh?
You need 15 women, one for each quality.
I would not mind that. We can work with that. Anyway. So it's like, I would bring women to the guru, and she just ignored everyone, just ignored them, wouldn't even look at them, right? And then I brought up Jadine. I had met her. I brought her up to the guru. She looked at her. She goes, is she your wife? I go, no. And I had my daughter with me. She was 2 years old at the time. She goes, who's the little girl? I said, that's my daughter. She says, is that her mother? I said, no. Is she your wife? No. Marry her. That's it. That's your wife. Marry her.
Mm.
32 years ago.
Yeah.
Actually, going to be 33 come August. And like, it's interesting how arranged marriages last so much longer than love marriages. You know, I pick you because the reason you're being picked is the way you look. You're being picked superficially. The art of courtship is lost. You know, you're not real. We're not realizing. I'm not even gonna say you're not realizing. We're not realizing in our society that you are defiling a virgin by dealing with her like she's a life support system for a vagina. You know, a woman is supposed to be treated a certain way. Now, you have different classes of women, and we know this. There's been institutions. The oldest institution was set up for this very thing. You don't go out. I've said it so many times. Don't start going out with these good women, these people that's been raised right. They got mom, they got dad, they good, and they'll be swayed by your slick words because that's the nature of us as people. We are swayed by what we think what we see as men, and women are swayed by what they hear, what you hear from us. This is the matrix, right? I was just getting
The
together.
manipulation.
Right. So you have respect for that woman. While you're building your wealth and you're building your life, you know, not only the woman, but her family too. You know, you come around and you're a knucklehead, you get with this girl, she loves you, she don't know better. All right? There's laws for this very fact. It's called statutory rape. Consensual sexual activity with a young girl below the age of 16, you are guilty because she really is subjected to your fine words. That's the case. We know this. There's laws for it. All right? You don't mess with those women. What do? You go to the oldest profession in the world. You deal with them until you're ready to be married and be responsible. And then you deal with them to find out, is this going to work? I like this girl. She's pretty. I like this guy. He speaks nicely. What else about us? What else about her? You know, we got with that, even though she might be a good girl, this quality in this girl is not going to work for me. I should not be trying to change her. I should get the package. Just like I become a man and I work on becoming a man, having my wealth, having scriptural knowledge, having various other types of knowledge and skills. Now I'm coming to the relationship with the things that could make her happy, have so much money, could buy a house, could do this, that, the other, give her children, build a family. Now we got, if somebody offered $1 trillion, we would not take for that woman, we wouldn't take it. So how much more valuable are these people in our life than money or this other kind of stuff? So we should think about it like that. If we wouldn't give up $1 trillion for that woman or those kids, why aren't we treating them like they're worth $1 trillion? And if things get a little bad, why aren't we trying to correct it as best we can? Now, for those who are in an abusive relationship, consider this. If a man hits a woman, this is abuse. But what women don't realize, when you unleash emotional, emotional violence on a man. If another man would have did that same thing, somebody would have lost their life. So
you said emotional violence?
Emotional abuse. Emotional abuse. Right? When you unleash that emotional abuse to a man, it's equal to physical abuse. And if another man would just say the things that women often do, he would kill that man. So we need to understand there are boundaries in a relationship. You just cannot go off and think things will be the same. You have to deal with this loving relationship because you make children out of love. You stay together out of this love.
Interject thing right there with what Lalji is saying, only because I feel that it'll be helpful to underline it for a woman to say. I don't think a polarized conversation in terms of right and wrong is an enlightened view, and alchemy doesn't support that. Our environment is an extension of us. But there's something that I'm observing, and I'm sensitive to it because I had sons. I didn't have a daughter. That there seems to be a lack of sensitivity to the impact that it has on a man's psyche when a woman is constantly berating him. And it's almost that it's a cultural norm
Mm.
that it's acceptable to do. You know, and it starts very early. I remember being a little girl, and I don't know how young, in the projects, and going to parties, and a little boy would get up all the nerves he could to ask a little girl to dance, and we could say no and laugh at him, and that was acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it continue, and that has where you know, it's just not, it's such, it has so that the relationship thing has so much nuance and complexities to it. So I'm just extracting. I'm not masculizing my position, but just that position on abuse and what it does to the soul. I think that particularly men of color are under tremendous psychological strain on a daily basis
Mm-hmm.
from the imageries
Mm-hmm.
that they get within our culture, how they're treated by the public school system. I raised boys, and my two little sons, if I sent them to the store, they were looked at like they were thugs, and they were two,
Mm-hmm.
you know, boys that from their parents you could see that they were cared for. But the amount of stress, the amount of psychological stress that
Mm-hmm.
men are under right now, I think that there's a strong longing within our community, more than anything else, more than whether or not a woman should be this and what the role of this is. More what's resonating within the community is that I think we on both sides, we want empathy.
Right.
We want empathy, that the female experience, women feel that men are not empathizing with what their experience is. And I think that sometimes that it's lost, that works both ways. I know that raising sons made me tremendously sensitive
You got that door.
to
Yes.
and you're a mother of boys, that made
Yes.
tremendously sensitive to the psychological strain and the real empirical danger that our men face on a daily basis all of their lives. If you're a
Mm-hmm.
black man in America and you get up and you go to work, you may or may not make it back home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know,
You
so,
know, many crimes have happened after some argument at home with a spouse.
oh
You know,
yeah,
you go back out into the world and the anger is still there. Next thing you know,
very
bam.
true, very true, very true, very true, very true, very true, very true,
Mm-hmm.
very.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And
Yes.
that's I personally feel like physical abuse and psychological abuse are deal breakers.
Yeah.
That because no one should be withstanding that. It doesn't mean that the marriage or relationship has to end, but I would recommend separation until that is addressed. I don't think someone should endure emotional or physical abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Substance abuse is another deal breaker. If you're dealing with someone that has a strong chemical abuse, the
Mm-hmm.
personality is under the control of a drug. You can't reach the person. If they are not in recovery, healing can't take place. Relationship can't take place with someone that has a heavy addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
I want to ask a question for both of you. I know when people are married for a certain amount of years, we tend to take that person for granted. And I noticed, Lalji, you said that you were kissing your wife here and here and here and here. So somewhere along the line, we, I guess, again, become disconnected. And within that relationship, within showing love and nurturing and caring for that other individual, and we become almost robotic. Get up, go to work, get the children together, and we're not pouring love into the relationship, we're not pouring love into the other person, and then we feel like, oh well, it's you, I'm going to leave you, and you're no good, and you're not doing this, and Like, how do people who are married for a long time or in relationships for many years, how do they maintain that love when they start to see the other person pulling away for whatever reason that they may be pulling away? I don't know if it's, psychological, mental, financial, all sorts of things we have that we're dealing with in our lives that affect our relationships at home. But when we come home, that family and that home is our sanctuary, and a lot of us are not looking at it that way, when the spouse or whatever is leaving to go outside to go to work or school or etc. So how do you maintain that? How do you keep that?
I noticed that, there's conflicts in relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when some conflict comes, then it comes again, then it comes again, 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 again. Then you start thinking that your mate is not worthy of you expressing love to them. And then instead of kissing them, no, I'm not going to kiss you. Instead of being nice to them or treating them, no, I'm not going to do this. You begin to set up barriers and start, you literally start setting up a business relationship. It's like, I don't love you. I love you if. And my guru said to us, he said, human love is business. This is, for the most part, it's business. You want real love, you develop a relationship with God or a dog, because that's where you're going to get unconditional love. But human love is, I will love you if. And if is not fulfilled, you're not going to love them. I think in order to us to get a glimpse of the side of real love, it has to be, I will love you. No more. That's it. Unconditional positive regard as often as I can. I'm going to get over what it is that you've done, and maybe I could help heal you, possibly. I could pray for you. I could do the Guru Gita for you. I could do something before I just say, it's all about me, and I'm going to leave you.
Right.
That's a big question, but you have a habit of asking big questions within the context. Miss Bliss asked these questions that you need a series to address. But
I also feel that if you don't, like, just like I say, there's 4 legs of life. There's legs inside your relationship. If you really care for a person, don't do what they don't like. If they really care for you, don't do what they don't like. Nothing wrong with setting up rules and boundaries. Please don't do this. It will end the relationship. And respecting that. Excuse me.
Bless you.
And if we love somebody, why wouldn't we respect their boundaries? I see some things that are. I was saying this to my wife today. There are stumbling blocks in the relationship as we begin to build them. We go into them with the wrong perspective. And there's other things that create havoc in a relationship because of the society we're living in, like serial polygamy or polygamy, monogamy, or trying to fight that if you're a man, when nature predisposed you to be polygamous. And every scripture in the world talks about men being polygamous, and they never said it was something wrong, as if it was a character defect in a man to be naturally. That's how nature predisposed us. Now, some men, after they done sold their oats, would be like, I don't even know way in the world I'm gonna have more than one woman. One is so much. I'm done. Okay. But there's just others that's how they are. And it's a natural predisposition. Nowhere in any scripture that I ever read, from the Bible to the Popol Vuh and everything in between, did they criticize any man for having 2 wives or 3 or 4. Lord Krishna had 16,000 wives. And so, yeah. And, so we're taking something out of a relationship that destroys relationships across the board. And these are practices that exist still, even now, in whole continents, Africa, Asia. So how did being a polygamist become a character defect is what I'd like to ask the panel and even the listening audience.
Well, I do want to interject something that again, yin and yang goes through the process of polar reversal. It's not static. The law of gender is not static. We have patriarchal periods, epochs, and we have matriarchal periods. Just like the sun and the moon, we have the full moon. All of the lunar cycles are different relationships between the sun and the moon. Most scriptures, scripture in general is patriarchal. Whereas societies that were did not necessarily have those that perspective on polygamy were not necessarily scriptural societies, like the Indus Valley civilization that has no evidence of war. It's every indication that it was. That men and women had a different relationship with each other. And it's not so much, it's from the perspective of, again, my perspective is alchemical, is that we see society or cultural norms as an extension of how energy behaves. So there are historical periods where it's suitable or maybe even beneficial to a people for that space-time for polygamy to be a norm, but it's not necessarily the historical norm in every historical epoch. We've had other types of marital configurations that, again, are not necessarily scriptural, but there's other evidence that was not necessarily the norm in that culture. Back to what Miss Bliss was saying about taking your mate for granted. I grew up colored, and it's interesting that Lalji keeps referencing the way it used to be. He and I grew up in a world where people were able to stay together for a much longer period of time. And we know statistically that what allows that to happen is culture. It is people who grow up with similar cultural ideas and norms. We know that those societies, even today, have a better chance, have a better statistic for marriage being successful than American society, because we live in a society that there is no cultural norm. People have the freedom to decide what they think is the cultural norm, and we don't have elders. Our leaders have a value system of monetizing. So our values are distorted by the society in which we live. So we're at a societal disadvantage. But time does not have to weaken a relationship. The world that Lalji and I grew up in, and what I considered a norm, was that if a woman was dating a man outside of his marriage, it was sort of generally understood amongst women, he's not leaving his wife. Because when a couple has been together for a period of time, even if they have periods of emotional highs and lows or affectionate highs and lows, a bond is created with a person that has been your ride or die when you've gone through difficulty. That creates that, and when you had the models that Lalji and I, we're the same generation, where, there was a place with, colored people did polygamy in their way. We did it in a way that was in alignment with the level of awareness that those people had at that particular space and time, and they were able to create cultural norms that they were successful. Married men very often had an outside woman, but she behaved a particular way within the context of the society. I'm not offering this up as this is how it should be done. I don't speak from a place of ideology. I speak from a place of energy because that's my discipline. But historically, there is a bond to think cultural norms, whether or not your society or the culture that you live in will tolerate you leaving your spouse. There are some societies that there's so much stigma around divorce that you're not going to divorce, no matter how toxic the marriage is. And then there is this bond that is created, whether or not there is a higher love. There is a higher love, and our men and women, at least in colored culture, the culture that I grew up in, there was a great deal of value placed on someone that you had some life experience with, and they had stayed with you. People like that. I have a neighbor who, she's up in age now. I could tell she's not healthy. The husband is more vital. Seems like he's aging better than the wife. And sometimes I'm around her and I get a sense that she may, look at me like, well, because they're my age, like, well, this is my husband. And I'm like, I wouldn't want that man. I wouldn't want, he's been with you for 50 years. You'll have a bond. If I was with him, I would be experiencing the shadow of your marriage because you've been with him for 50 years. And that was a cultural norm at one time. A man, he might spend the night, he may pay the rent and whatever, but he did not leave his wife. So it's not always that we get tired of, and there are certain type of cultural rituals that people did that maintained in the colored culture that kept their marriages going. Yeah. My uncles, my grandfather was one of 5 men, and all of my uncles called their wives Miss. At least in common company, they would never call their wives just by their first name. There was great ritual and ceremony in colored culture. Miss Johnny, Miss Kate, these were my aunts. And the degree of support. My uncle, one of my uncles, Avon, he didn't go to church. He gambled, but he wouldn't gamble in the house. He built himself a place in the garage where he would gamble because he wouldn't interfere with his wife's pristine house. And he would get up Sunday morning. He didn't go to church, but he would get up, shower, get dressed, drive her, and come back and pick her up. Because this is what kept, this was the agreements that their marriage had. So there are components, that culture, commonality of ideas, and statistically, we know the people who have the most successful relationships. They're the people that are mature. Poverty puts stress on families. Poverty undermines our ethics and our moralities and how we interact with each other. We know that when people have an opportunity where they have the basics, when they have food, clothing, and shelter, they have the opportunity to support their process of maturity. We know that people that live in cultures and in environments like that have a better chance of having successful relationships. So some of the things that we're attributing to relationships issues are really sociological issues.
I thought about and veggie backing off of what Sister Diane is saying. It's like I thought about a school, many years ago, and I thought, how would you create a school that a kid would like? And initially, I thought this was some big thing that you could do. It's a complicated and so. Then I realized, it's not that complicated at all. There's information out here on learning that is unfathomable, and some people are privy to it. I said to myself, well, how would you have liked school to have been? You as a person who loves school, how would you have liked it to have been? And I said to myself straight away, how you see the Walt Disney, they come in Tinkerbell, just flying in the air around that castle. I said to myself, I'd like my school to look like that castle, like the wonderful world of color and just a beautiful environment. I like my school to look like that. The teachers, if they're female, they should be lovely, beautiful, warm, this and that. The subject that we should learn should always be in play. No subject should be learned past, I'd say, the 5th grade that we're not going to use all our life. And the education should be empowering. Every subject that you learn should empower you with the skill as well as some academic knowledge. And, you know, look at our reality now. You get a person, they got a master's degree. You ask them simple questions like, how many dimes are in a dollar? And this is sad. They ain't going to be able to tell you half the time. How many states are in the United States? What was the last state initially entered into the Union? How many continents on the planet? Stuff like this, people with master's degrees are not able to answer. That doesn't mean that they're not intelligent, but they didn't answer them questions in college. They were very elementary. You forget simple things, but much of this stuff is not that important. And then they leave out stuff that's very important. Like, how should you treat mom and dad?
You say these pearls, these jewels, Lalji, and forgive me for I hope I'm not being rude, but it's you just said something that you say these things, and I want to pause you and pull it out and underline it because it's so important. What you just said about if the teachers are women, that they should be beautiful and loving and nurturing, that answers your question, Miss Bliss, in terms of what has happened to us. This society requires that we give our children over to a system that's void of love, and that's how they grow up. They spend that, and then they send them home with work. Then they have to put enough books on their back at 5 years old to give them scoliosis. So the fact that our children, you know, I'm doing curriculum development now for early childhood education, and I had to very cleverly incorporate love into the practices because it's not considered professional. You know, so the fact that our children, what you just said, Lalji, about that, the first thing is that the people teaching the children should love them.
Yeah.
That our children grow up, that they're required to grow up and be educated in an environment absent of nurturing and love and affection is extremely unhealthy. That, and it's hierarchical. They learn to judge very early. We'll put the smart kids over here and we'll call that the smart, we'll label it the smart class. And then children that experience reality differently, that may be creatively, you know, gifted in another area, but we're going to call those children, you know, we create a very toxic, unhealthy environment for our children to grow up in. So how are we going to evolve in being whole, nurturing beings?
We have to set it up.
Yes.
I think what we have to do is to purposefully set it up.
That's the only way it's going to happen.
Create an environment or multiple environments, and maybe you get to the point where we, our Hebrew Jewish brothers was able to do was to get a state of their own. You know, I don't know how that will work out. I don't know if we could buy land. I definitely am not going to go somebody and kill people to take their land, you know, which seems to be the norm on planet Earth. But if you can create small environments that have this type of reality that you say, if life here is this good, how much better could heaven possibly be? We can create those environments.
Do you know what? When we start the conversation of what we need to do as a people, I think it's important to remind people that are in their 20s, 30s, and 40s and 50s is that we've done all that. That post-slavery, Black people built communities. Black Wall Street in Texas was not a unique environment. That the Black community was commercial. We had churches. We had commerce. We built vital communities, and the government sponsored raids came in and destroyed those communities and broke them down and destroyed the evidence in the history that they ever occurred. So future generations feel like, well, my elders, my ancestors did not build and that is not the case. That's not the truth.
You know,
Yes.
when Black Wall Street was happening, there was 120 other communities in America like them. Redwood, Hayti. Hayti was bigger than Black Wall Street. Hayti was even bigger than Black Wall Street. They also called Hayti, what was it? Black Wall Street. They called Hayti Black Wall Street also. There's still a conglomerate of blacks and Jews that got together back at the turn of the century, because blacks had buku money. They had the oil wells, they had the gold mines in Oklahoma, which was lands that was put aside for natives and Africans, right? Yes. But when the oil and the gold was there, they moved to take it all away from us. They started making white people $5 Indians, you know, and this kind of thing, so they could get the benefit of what the government gave to us. But Black Wall Street was started by a guy, he only had 40 acres. And the prosperity that they had was at that time, it looked like the 125th Street during the 60s. It blew my mind. And I was like, man, can you look at this? And when I went to Africa and I saw Africa and California, right? I'm looking at the architecture in Africa, the Moorish architecture. I'm like, interesting. I thought this was supposed to be, you know, the pits. Then when I go to California, the Malibu and Carmel, the same architecture exists. So I'm saying, okay, we've been told the wrong history, of course. But the architecture in California came from the Moors of Northern Africa and Spain.
When was the last time you saw a modern African city in an American movie?
Yeah.
So the image is that Africa is still undeveloped. That's the image Africans have, because you don't see the truth of modern African culture. Not only do you not see imagery of Africa and antiquity, Timbuktu and all of the great empires of ancient Africa, you don't see that. Except for Egypt, which the academic community continues to try and reframe and make it, I don't know, a part of Europe somehow. But the reality, you know, these are things I call spells. And these are things that we've been talking about for generations, that we want to establish that there is a mind control, there is a misinformation that's going on here that is contributing to our being able to connect with the deepest aspect of who we are, which is magical, magical.
It's sort of like this. Winston tastes good.
Winston tastes good.
Like a cigarette should.
So in raising our children, they need to see people like us be successful. And in an environment where there's a town or a city or maybe even just a block of people who look like us, who are successful, and then going into the schools where these same people are teaching them. But that's not what we have right now. I mean, the reality is we are far from that vision. So
in the South, you see it a lot more than you do in the North.
That's what I was about to say. You know, my family's from Atlanta, and I go to visit. The South is filled with Black communities of people in beautiful homes and several cars and doctor, lawyer, Indian chief. That really is a Southern norm. Most Black communities in the South look like that. But what's absent is they've disconnected from their spirit. The connection to spirit has been severed.
Yeah.
You know, so the most basic thing is that, because we've done that. We have all of that. We have doctor, lawyer, Indian chief. But we have to be grounded in spirit for our children to benefit from it and for us to benefit from it.
You know, there's this brother down here. He made himself our friend, right? He embraced me and my wife. He, you know, as we were paying hotel fees to find a place, moving to Atlanta, he let us come stay with him until we found a suitable place, and we found it. And like the way he lives is like, you know, and the stories that he would tell me about his father and his mother, of course, they stayed together. It was till death do they part. And they even adopted kids. And it was like, your family's like the Huxtables. He said, my whole community was like this. My whole community.
You
I
don't
didn't
see
know, and I'm
it in
telling you, he
you
said
don't
I
see
didn't
it
know.
in the
I
media.
didn't know about black people doing as bad as you telling me they did until I saw TV. This is what he's telling me, and I was saying to him, I never saw any family like your family until I saw the Huxtables on TV. Before that, I never saw no prosperous black family unless they was hustling in the hood, which is a different
Right.
thing. You know, that wasn't a little different, right? Matter of fact, a lot different. But the thing I'm saying is, we didn't see those images. We got Winston tastes good like a cigarette should. In other words, we've been indoctrinated with stuff all through our lives.
TV
For
images.
yeah. You know, having us thinking in ways that are completely false. The
Yes.
matter of
Get rid
fact,
of
the
those
media
TVs,
is more
family. Turn those
powerful.
TVs off.
You know, the media is more powerful against us than standing armies. If we were to check the media, we could grow leaps and bounds.
Well, yeah, the media is a powerful force of enslavement. You know, it has a tremendous impact on consciousness.
However, in a way, this is our media right here. What we're doing right now, this is a form of media in addition to a form of education. So we
Yes.
have to take advantage of every opportunity that we have to do things like what we're doing right now.
Right.
So this is our media,
Mhm.
you know?
Can you get me my prayers over there?
Do you think it's time for us to do some breath work and take
Yes.
people through?
Yes. So we got a couple of minutes, and Lalji, you're going to say a prayer and we're going to do breath work. Diana, you want to lead on that, family? Get your water, your crystals.
So Laraji, I'll do take people through some breath to regulate their emotions. The breath is a phenomenal tool.
Thank you, Janie.
So whatever you're sitting on, if you're sitting on something, sit upright, not straight, because the spine is not actually straight. Bring your shoulders up into your ears and then rotate back and bring your chin level to the floor. Slide your pelvis forward and then relax it so that there's a curve in the lower back. The back should be curved. Sitting up straight is not a straight spine. And what you're simply going to do is put your attention on your breath. Relax your shoulders. Be conscious of where your emotion in this moment is registering in your body, your pulse, your heart rate. How do you feel in your cells? How you feel in your cells is a litmus for how hormones are behaving in this moment in your blood. When we experience emotion, our endocrine system releases hormones into the blood, and the blood delivers it into the cell on a very deep level. So we can feel it. So first let's accept and allow ourselves and honor what we're feeling, whatever emotions came up during the broadcast. Some trigger from the past, something that's happening with us right now, conflict, whatever it is we're experiencing in this moment, we honor it. So we're just taking a moment to allow ourselves to acknowledge to ourselves, I was hurt, I was betrayed, I was treated unfairly, I was not cared for by those who I needed care. I feel like a motherless child. I did not have a father. I did not have a mother. So now you're going to go, and this is just taking, well, let's sit there for a moment and let that reality be acknowledged, be honored. How does it feel in the body? How does it register in my life? So now you're going to create a circuit. You're going to rest your right palm on top of your left palm and let your thumbs touch. This brings the yin and yang component within yourself into balance. Love is the place of non-duality. Love is the place where those two forces unite into one, which is divine, and that dwells within you always, and you can claim it always. Any life experience is temporal. Your divinity is universal and permanent. So make yourself comfortable and allow your thumbs to touch and allow your palm to rest in your lap. And inhale and exhale. And notice how the emotion begins to neutralize. Your mouth should be gently closed. You are divine. You are an infinite being having a finite experience. You have the power to call on the infinite aspect of your being, which is divine, at any time, and you do that through the breath. So let's just take a few minutes to breathe, inhale and exhale, and allow the breath to neutralize the emotions. And to neutralize the emotions means to balance the hormones, have the heartbeat regulate. Now you're going to stretch. Stretching releases endorphins, whichever way your body needs to stretch, and drink water. Water delivers oxygen into your cells, allowing you to release whatever toxins, emotions, or things. Emotions are toxins. So water helps to flush them out of our body. And all that remains is the lesson. I will no longer be a slave to my past. I will no longer be a slave to my emotions. I am a child of God, divine and whole. So be it. All righty. All righty, Lalji, take us on home in prayer.
As this is a program of love, I'm going to read a prayer of divine love,
Thank
a prayer for divine love. In the name of the beloved I am presence, I call the power of divine love to be magnified with my heart and world daily. I am love, joyous love, radiating love, unconditional love. God consumes my shadows, transmuting them into love.
Yes.
This day, I am a focus of divine love, flowing through every cell of my being. I am a living stream of pure divine love that can never be requalified by fear, anger, hatred, dislike, or greed. All negative thoughts and feelings are now dissolved and consumed by the power of divine love, which I am. I am, I am, I am love. I love in the consciousness of love. I am love in its full expression, blessing all mankind. I radiate love. I am love in action, blessing, uplifting, and healing all on the earth. Almighty I am. Almighty I am. Almighty I am.
Ashe. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. Whew. It was beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful, 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 beautiful.
Yes, yes. Thank you, family. So we're going to do the closing out. I want to remind everybody that we come back on again tonight at 7 p.m. with another show. And the topic is going to be entheogens and racism. We're going to bring back Diana Pharr. I believe Brother Kyle may be on. And I think Yania is also going to be there. And of course, the fire burner rising sun will be there setting fire under everybody's butts.
Okay, so Lalji, we are officially the elders.
Absolutely, you are the elders in the community.
So we'll sit in status this evening.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, family. We're going to do the closing right now. One moment.
Success.
Health, love, wealth is your destiny.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I want to thank you, Diana. Thank you, Lalji, for being with us on the show. So grateful, so thankful. Do you guys have any closing statements? We have your emails, and I think, Lalji, we have your phone number. If family, you guys have any questions, you want to reach out. Remember, tonight at 7, we have another show coming on, and thank you. Thank you for participating. We love you.
Good night.
Have a good day.
All righty, darling. See you
God
in
bless.
a while.
Good night.